depends on our worldview. Now, VCY America presents WorldView Radio with Brannon Howse.
And welcome. Glad you're with us on this May 29th, 2025. May 29th, 2025. Let's do a little news roundup today. Let's talk about cryptocurrency. Is President Trump trying to pull the rug out from underneath the Federal Reserve, which tends to be, I think, a key to the deep state's power and money? And let's talk also about Canada. I'm going to have Carl Tykreb from Canada on my broadcast tonight at WorldView Tube. But Canada is unsafe for Jews. That's what they're saying. The National Security Council in Israel says Canada is not safe for Jews. How long before they declare America is not safe for Jews? Not just Canada, but America. Well, of course, we know last week we had the tragic and horrific murder of two Jewish young people. And the reports are that Sarah and Josh first, then Sarah, were both Messianic Jews. Both had come to believe in Yeshua as their Messiah. How long before it's not safe for Christians in America? These are legitimate questions. One reason why is because no one's doing anything about the problem. I should say virtually no one. There's a few, but virtually no one's doing anything about the problem that's putting Christians and Jews in the crosshair. There's a new congressman. I'm going to try to get him on our broadcast. I met him when we were in Washington, D.C. And he said, I'd love to come on your broadcast. I told him who we were, what we did. I had reported on him right before he won his election. There was a special election, and he won. He's now a U.S. congressman. Now, I know there's some controversy for some of the things he has said, like, hey, we had to nuke Japan, maybe we got to nuke Gaza. Okay. I don't know if that was hyperbole, but whatever. If you understand the ideology and what the Jews have been fighting for so long, you would understand why sometimes they say things that maybe they don't fully mean. There is some hyperbole, but there's a lot of frustration there. But there's a great article out today at the Rare Foundation. Here it is. Florida Congressman Randy Fine says what no one in Washington dares. Quote, violent Islam is the norm. Peaceful Islam is the exception. I think he's 100% right. And why are people not talking about it? Well, he did an interview. Again, we're going to try to get him. He's from the 6th Congressional District in Florida. Let me give you a few quotes from the interview. Quote, there is a fundamentally broken culture that is fundamentally built on evil. Sometimes you must defeat evil, and we as a society have been unwilling to do that. In fact, we have coddled it, end quote. He says we have a Muslim problem. He's right. Or maybe we would say we have an Islam problem, because there are many Muslims who they're not really practicing. They don't really practice. Oh, they're Muslim by birth, by heritage. But if they're practicing Islam, they know full well what they're doing. We have an Islam problem. And the congressman is right. It's being coddled. Remember last week, we had someone on the broadcast, I cannot remember who, but we had on somebody that said, who was it, Logan? Someone we had on last week said that when they go to these college campuses, 15% of the people that are chanting and carrying on are Islamist. The other 85% are Americans. Americans, so-called Christians, standing behind the Islamist. That's right. Islam is being coddled by politicians and by so-called Christian leaders alike. The Yale document, which says we all worship the same God, wrong. Interfaith dialogue, i.e. James White, and others that defended him. Islam is getting a pass. Islam is not a threat to the church, said Justin Peters. Islam is not a threat, but you better look out for Benny Hinn and Paula White and Creflo Dollar and all them, because don't you know those people are flying airplanes into skyscrapers? Oh, I'm sorry, they weren't. How can you say one group of false teachers is a threat, but another group isn't? And I'm not here to defend Creflo Dollar or Benny Hinn or any of them. But you can't say that these people are a threat to the church, false teaching, false teachers, false theology, bad theology. But Islam, a satanic group, is not. But you see, evangelicalism, mainstream evangelicalism, has coddled Islam. How can the Christian leaders really say much about the politicians when the church should be leading the way in exposing Islam and the cults and the occult? Ephesians 5:11 have nothing to do with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather coddle it. You know that passage, right? Isn't that what it says? Have nothing to do with the unfruitful works of darkness, but coddle it. No, it doesn't say that, does it? It says expose it. What fellowship does righteousness have with unrighteousness? Light with darkness. The things of God with the things of Satan or Baal. What fellowship? Zero. And what's it say in that passage? If you continue reading 2 Corinthians chapter 6, I'm going to say off the top of my head around verse 17. If you don't do this, James White, if you do not mix light with darkness, the things of God with the things of Baal, by like having an interfaith dialogue in a church and claiming that Christians and Muslims can find common ground, if you don't do this, then guess what? It says, I will welcome you. That's the real meaning of the passage. I will welcome you, or I will bless you. Church. Who's this passage to in 2 Corinthians? The church. Christians. If you don't mix the things of God with the things of Satan in spiritual enterprises, again, this is not about having a hamburger with your neighbor, your unsafe neighbor and friends. That's not what this is about. Spiritual enterprises. If you don't do this, I will bless you. I will welcome you. What's the opposite of blessing and welcome? Curse, judgment. So it's kind of difficult for us as Christians in America to get too much on our high horse when some of our leading evangelicals, so-called, apologists, so-called, are making a way into defense and coddling Islam. And here's a Jewish congressman saying, we've got a problem. This cancer of Islam is being coddled. I had a chance to visit yesterday with an individual from Kansas, Overland Park, Kansas, Johnson County. And I was having a conversation with him, and turns out he knew this young lady, Sarah, that was murdered last week, who worked for the Israeli embassy. He knew her. He watched her grow up. He told me about his son. He said his son has autism. He said Sarah had a brother, or has a brother. And the family, that his young son, his son is now in his late 20s. His son, as a young boy, his first opportunity to have a sleepover with kids of his age, he said, was at Sarah's parents' house with her brother and some other young boys. And his dad said, I went out and I bought all the kids sleeping bags and little tents, and they were going to have a camp out. I don't know if it was in the living room or the backyard, but they got sleeping bags, they got little tents. And he said their family, here's what he said to me. This family were the ones that included my autistic son. He said, this is the nicest family. Turns out, he said to me, my wife, that's Sarah's mother, is one of my wife's best friends. He said, this is the sweetest family, and they showed such compassion to my young son with autism, who's now in his late 20s. And he says, I was at the funeral. I was at Sarah's funeral this week. I said, really? I don't know if it's been reported in the news, and I haven't looked it up, but he said the service had to be interrupted due to a bomb threat. I'm like, really? That's what, this is where we're at, folks. This is where we're at as a country. But there's also a good article out today. If you go over to WorldViewReport.com, your daily aggregated news site, if I can find it real quick, there's a really good article out there today. I put it there somewhere. And the author was talking about the fact that we got a real problem here for Jews, but also for Christians, and that the Christians need to wake up. I'm not seeing it right here on my website. If you see it, Logan, let me know. But I read an article today saying that this is also a problem for Christians that defend the Jewish people. We're in a crosshair. And the article was saying that you're not only going to see the increase of Jews being hunted, but Christian Zionist, being hunted. I believe it full well. When I come back, I want to continue with the warning by this Jewish congressman from Florida who says there's very few people in America that are dealing with the real threat to our country, Islam. Instead, they're coddling it. And then Canada. Canada has now been declared Israel's National Security Council issues a travel warning for Jews. How long before that travel warning extends to America? We'll be right back. Don't go away. Hello, I'm Brannon Howse. Hey, consider going to MyPillow.com right now and get your pet a pet bed, just like my beloved Delta has right here in my office. Not only can you get pet beds, but you can get sheets, towels, blankets, and so much more. Slippers, sandals, robes, beach towels. It just goes on and on. But please, go to MyPillow.com and be sure to use the promo code B66. When you do, not only will you receive savings, but a generous percentage of each purchase comes back to continue supporting this 24/7 free broadcast outlet. We need your support. Hey, look, we're entrepreneurs, just like my friend Mike Lindell. We all need your support, and you're getting quality products at the same time. So please, go to MyPillow.com and use the promo code B66. Mike always has amazing specials going right there at MyPillow. So check out whatever those specials might be today. You never know, Mike's always changing it up and making new offers right there at MyPillow.com. But be sure to use the promo code B66. I got such a smart audience. Such a smart audience. One of my listeners just reminded me, yeah, it was Yasser Qadi. Yasser Qadi in the video that I played said when he goes to these college campuses, 15% are Muslim, the other 85% are Americans standing behind him, defending them. It was Yasser Qadi himself. Wow. Fine, the congressman from Florida, Jewish man. Quote, the vast majority of the people who engaged in atrocities on October 7th were not card-carrying members of Hamas. The problem is not Hamas. The problem is Gaza. The problem is Arabs, end quote. Well, Israel is finding that out as they're seeing increased terrorist attacks from their own Israeli Arabs, right? He said the civil rights organization for Muslims in the United States is CARE. It is unquestionably a terrorist organization, a terrorist front, end quote. Well, he may be getting sued because CARE seems to like to sue people. Council on American Islamic Relations, founded in 1994 by Muslim Brotherhood. Remember, Hamas was started in 1987 by Muslim Brotherhood. Quote, the leader of CARE stood up after October 7th and talked about how happy it made him. And he still has the job, end quote. It's not an extremist element. Violent Islam is mainstream. In the United States, the nexus of Muslim terror is in our universities. We paid for him, the Washington, D.C. terrorist, to be brainwashed. And we've got to stop it. And that's exactly what Alan Dershowitz said last week when I interviewed him about this atrocious murder of these two young people. I said, remember when you came on my broadcast a few months ago and predicted that these young people on the college campus would be brainwashed and turned into terrorists? He said, yes, I remember that, because that's exactly what I saw in the 1960s when I was combating the Weather Underground. Many of those radical students of the 60s turned into terrorists, bombings. Don't forget, it's the Weather Underground and their manifesto, Prairie Fire, about burning down the whole system in America. They make great excuses for the PLO, Palestinian Liberation Organization. Sound familiar? They praised the CCP and the way of life of the communists in China, and that America should emulate that. See, all the way back to, what was that, 1973, 74, the manifesto by the Weather Underground. Back then even, they were praising the red-green axis. And now we're raising these terrorists on our college campuses. And you and I are paying for it. You and I are paying for it. This system we have in America is not working. It is wrong that it's so hard to sue the federal government. That's wrong. It should be easy peasy to sue the federal government. It should be so easy to sue the feds. It should be a common thing that they actually have a full group of people, bureaucrats, sitting there doing nothing but preparing to go to trial to confront Americans, because Americans have such an easy time suing the federal government. That's the way it should be. Because then you would have accountability. If you could actually bring it before non-biased judges, but you can't do that. We have immunity. You don't have standing. All these other things they have made up to stop there from being any accountability. This is not working. This system we have in America is not based on a constitutional republic, and it is not working to the good of the people, a government of the people, by the people, for the people. To the contrary, it is a Marxist system of progressive income tax that steals from one and gives to another. And we're largely stealing from hardworking Americans, and we're giving it to terrorist organizations hiding under different names. We are giving it to sex traffickers. We are giving it to deviants and perverts. We're giving it to nations that want us literally murdered. This is not a common sense system. This is a suicidal system. And it blows my mind that so few people in America are angry about it, a righteous indignation that you get up every day and you work very hard. You put your hand on the plow to provide for your family, to try to leave an inheritance to your children and grandchildren, because the Bible says that's what a righteous man does, not only spiritually, but also, I think, materially, to help them. But that's hard to do today because the government's stealing it and giving it to people that want to turn your grandson into a girl. They want to bring illegals in here who want to then become part of civil rights groups that sue and make it illegal for us to speak the truth about Islam. Or that we now have to accommodate their prayer rugs and prayer rooms and diets in our schools and the airports. And you and I get up every day and we work and our money is stolen. About half of what we make is stolen and given to crooks and perverts. And you would think at some level the American people would be angry, but they're not. There's a percentage that are, but most of them, can I just tell you, most of them are so apathetic and so passive, they think this is liberty and freedom. They think this is liberty and freedom because they don't really know what liberty and freedom is. They don't know they're enslaved. They have no idea they don't live in a free country. President Trump says he's going to try to do something about this tax system. There's talk he might do away with the federal income tax. I hope he does, because the federal income tax, folks, this whole progressive federal Marxist system is how the deep state's funded itself. When I was talking to Senator Ron Johnson on Capitol Hill when we were there a few weeks ago, he talked about what President Trump's trying to do and that there are a lot of unknowns, but this is very important if we're going to restore the republic. Senator Tommy Tuberville said the same thing, independently of each other. And now we have a judge. Now we have a federal judge. See, again, this is ridiculous. We now have a judge that is ruling that President Trump's tariffs are not legal. Here's the headline. Stocks dip after Trump administration appeals U.S. trade court ruling on tariffs. Yeah, we've got a judge. They've ruled that he can't do this. And of course, they're going to appeal. And well, they should. But see, these tariffs, they need to work, folks, because this is how we're going to have an external revenue service versus the crooked internal revenue service, which is how the deep state has stolen from the American people their children and grandchildren's inheritance to give it to their special interest groups, to launder it for themselves under the table, to give it to the perverts, to run their sex trafficking rings and operations. But what percentage of Americans even understand what I'm talking about today? And we're funding terrorism. We're funding the rape of your daughters and granddaughters. Oh yeah, this is one of the lies that is not told. The number of American women being sexually assaulted by the Islamist. Here in America and in Europe. And you and I are paying for it. You and I are paying for our children and grandchildren to be molested, raped. By allowing this ideology, and eventually you and I will be paying, I hate to say it, for some of our children and grandchildren to be blown up, their body parts strewn across the street, and a tangled mess of dismembered body parts. Because it's coming. We are going to see another terrorist attack in America. You cannot let all these people in, all these jihadis in, and not think you're not going to have terrorist attacks equal to or greater than 9/11. October 7th style. They told us after October 7th, We're going to do it again and again. And we're going to do it in America even. Yeah, that's what they were talking about. And who's paying for it? You are. I am. Can President Trump neuter the deep state that uses this money? Trillions of dollars that are missing. Trillions. Missing. But don't you dare file your taxes late, or they'll hit you with penalties, they'll hit you with interest. While the deep state uses trillions of dollars that they cipher through all kinds of ways to enrich themselves, and the Marxists and the globalists use it to destabilize America. The congressman went on to say, it's not the West's job to feed terrorists. It's not the West's job to provide electricity to terrorists. It's not the West's job to provide water to terrorists. It's the West's job to do one thing and one thing only: win. I'm sure he's referring to all the aid going into Gaza. We've given so much aid to Gaza over the years, and every time we do, what do they do with it? They take it and they build tunnels and they build terrorist sites and they buy weapons. At what point do we have to stop saying, oh, those poor Gazans that are being abused by Hamas? Are they? Because again, remember how many of them joined in on October 7th. If you use human shields, that's your problem, not ours. If you don't want a war, don't take hostages. No more foreigners at our universities. If you come to our country to get an education, you should keep your mouth shut. Get your education and leave. That's what the congressman said. He's right. Marco Rubio, he's not tolerating this anymore. I know he's gotten the label of being kind of a neocon, and etc., but he sure is doing the right thing on this. He's not tolerating these people coming here on our dime and holding these anti-Semitic, racist, genocidal rallies on our campuses. So I like that about Marco. He said, the Congressman Fine said, expel them all. They agreed not to protest. It's in the paperwork they signed. He said, there's evil in this world. We do not share the same values, and all cultures are not equal. One side's going to win. You listen to a lot of these imams in the United States, they talk about caliphate, Sharia law, conquest, and our side chooses to say, oh, they don't mean it. Western civilization is at risk. I'm going to fight for it to survive. Well, he's right. Joe Biden wanted people to believe that people praying in front of abortion clinics, abortion mills, were domestic terrorists, while the real jihadis literally train in their mosques for the killing of Christians and Jews. We'll be right back. Hello, I'm Brannon Howse. Is the government tracking you? Do they have access to all your data? Well, if you go to WorldViewTalk.com, you'll find out about a cell phone company that, well, does not store your data. They don't do that. This is what they're known for. They don't store your data. You have privacy. You're not being tracked. That's why a lot of folks are turning to WorldViewTalk.com. You'll find their prices are very competitive. All the details are there at WorldViewTalk.com. Again, WorldViewTalk.com. Oh, while you're there, not only do they have cell phones that aren't tracking you, you can find out about how to get a satellite phone. Should the whole system go down and you want to communicate with a family member or a loved one, you might want to have a satellite phone. Or how about their solar generators? They have great solar generators. Check them all out right now. WorldViewTalk.com, WorldViewTalk.com. All right, welcome back. Glad you're with us. WorldView Radio, our website, WorldViewRadio.com. WorldViewRadio.com. We're in an interesting predicament here, folks. We got an interesting situation. Because I'm patriotic. And most of you are as well. I want to celebrate what's good about America. There's a lot of great things about America. There are a lot of great Americans. There really are. And I don't want the bad things happening in our country or the bad people that are here to deprive me or deprive you from the pleasure, the obligation of celebrating what is good about America, what has been good about America. Patriotism. What we see today is not patriotism with so much of what's happening. It's the opposite of patriotism. It's the opposite of God and country, hearth and home. Don't confuse the deep state, the establishment, the corrupt political parties. Don't confuse that with real patriotism. Don't confuse that or let that diminish. So many of the people in our nation's history that have fought and died for free speech, for freedom of religion, for parental authority, for private property rights, all the things that we see that are listed as the rights that are given to us not by government, but by God. So it might be a little odd what I'm going to say next when this has been the theme of the show. But I think it's very fitting to announce to you what it is I'm about to announce. It is because of the political correctness, the multiculturalism that is a denigration of our Western culture. It is because of the cultural Marxism that it is all the more imperative that come 2026, we celebrate real American values, real moral virtues, eternal truths, the laws of nature and nature's God, and the people that died to defend those virtues. It's imperative that we do that. It's imperative that our children see us acknowledging the great things that America, through God's blessing and providence, have been able to do and accomplish. That America has, in many ways, been that city on a hill that spread the gospel all over the world and built Christian radio and broadcasting and seminaries and colleges and printing houses that have evangelized the world. Why? Because we had the freedom to do it. We had the freedom, the free will to do it without fear of reprisal or punishment by a tyrannical government. We have had fear of reprisal and punishment of a tyrannical government in the last few years. But it's important that we not let the cultural Marxists cause us to become so demoralized that we take their behavior, their history, their ideology, and allow it to dilute, to scar our history and our heritage. They don't want you to celebrate what is good about America. They want to burn it to the ground. They don't want you to remember what those who've gone before us did so that we can sit here and talk on radio across the nation without fear of reprisal. They don't want you to celebrate the providential victories that our families and nations and cities and states have known throughout our long history of 249 years, and soon to be 250 if God allows. They don't want you to remember the mighty things that we saw and have seen God do. They want to erase God from the equation. They want to erase God's providence, his direction. They want you to only look to the state. They don't want you to worship God, acknowledge God, lean on God, depend on God, obey God. This is patriotism. And many have given their last full measure of devotion to these ideals, these truths. So come the 250th anniversary of America, because we are seeing the assault on the virtues and the values that have made America the longest running constitutional republic in the history of the world. We are going to celebrate. But do not confuse the America, the half of America, and those that are here, the illegals that are against our country, the CCP, the Islamists, and those of Americans that have thrown in with them. Don't confuse that with the other half that still wants to acknowledge God, wants to acknowledge our history, our heritage, wants to celebrate what's good and right and just. Don't let them take that from us. So yes, in some ways it seems a little like, really, you're going to celebrate this country when you are so unhappy with what's happening? That's right. All the more reason, all the more reason to celebrate and to highlight what's happened, what's been accomplished, and what's at stake. Because if this trend continues a few more years, there won't be the freedom to assemble, to worship, to acknowledge God. They're already tearing down statues left and right. And by the way, let me just tell you something else I've been researching an awful lot. And that's the Civil War. And we're going to be releasing, as part of the launching of our new History channel, and you've already seen the first one we've released on the attempted assassination of Ronald Reagan, President Reagan. That was released last Friday. That's at WorldViewTube.com if you want to watch. But we've got a lot more to go from what we filmed when we were in D.C. And we've got a lot more we're going to do, including we're going to do some big programs on the truth about the Civil War. Because let me tell you something, folks. We've been lied to. What that was really about. We've been lied to. They all want to tell you it's about slavery. Really? No, they needed a moral cause. They needed some kind of moral cause to shadow and be a masking and a camouflage. Were there some fighting for slavery? In any war, you have people fighting for all different things. But slavery was on its way out. Many of our founders who owned slaves publicly wrote, this has got to end. This needs to end. It was on its way out. There are so many things we've been told that are not historically accurate about the Civil War, so that people don't see the truth. And yes, our country has been shaped much differently because we ended up with such a strong federal central government to the detriment of state rights. But we're going to, Lord willing, likely in April, late April, middle to late April, or early May of next year, we are endeavoring to hold a huge patriotic pageant that we will be writing. I'll be writing it. We'll be working with our team, with a lot of our footage from DC, from Williamsburg, all these different things, to produce a huge patriotic special for our 250th anniversary. And we had to choose today between holding it in, say, Branson, Missouri, or Milwaukee. And I'm pleased to say that we have chosen to hold it in Milwaukee for various reasons. We're working with a group of people. We're working with some organizations, some schools, universities. We're in talks with them about full choirs, full orchestras. Because, folks, the Islamist, the Marxist, they do not want us to remind our children and our grandchildren and ourselves about what has made America good and great. They don't want people empowered with the virtue and the values that are necessary to fight off the enemies and the enemy's propaganda war and brainwashing and disinformation, misinformation that they accuse us of, because that's part of the psychological process, is the projection onto us what they really are. Misinformation, disinformation, not us. They don't want us to celebrate those virtues and values that are the ones that will empower us to understand we do have a righteous cause for liberty and freedom. Not for materialism, not for selfishness, but for the proclamation of the gospel, raising our children, the right to leave an inheritance, spiritual and material, to our children and grandchildren. These are righteous causes. They don't want people empowered knowing this is a right and just thing to do. They want you questioning, am I intolerant? Well, am I really a bigot? Am I really just Islamophobic? Am I not multicultural enough? They want you questioning. Well, let it be known. There's no reason to question patriotism. We're going to make the event free. Who knows? Maybe we'll have to do 2 nights. Wouldn't that be wonderful? There are so many people want to celebrate patriotism that we have to do 2 nights. I don't know. We'll just start with 1. But I've been working on this now already a few weeks. Quietly. No, the Islamists don't want you celebrating America. These Marxists, the globalists. No. But we're going to do it. And we're going to take the 250th anniversary to do it. This congressman said if you target someone because they're wearing a kippah, it's a hate crime. If you encounter a street demonstration in Florida and somebody's blocking the street, you can run them over. That's right. They've passed legislation in Florida. These people surrounding cars and making many of them fearful they're going to be pulled out of the car and beaten, like we saw in the LA riots. Well, Florida's taking care of a lot of this. Yeah, there's a cancer. We've coddled the Marxists and the Islamists, and we wonder why we're going down. 1-800-347-9829. 1-800-347-9829. Phone's over. We're not changing courses now. We are who we are. We're committed to the truth that we are committed to. WorldView Tube is a broadcast network that I started in 2006, but it's based on my 35 years as an author and speaker and commentator. WorldView Tube is here to defend the truth of a Christian worldview. And we believe we can apply it to all areas of life, like law, science, economics, history, family, social issues, education, religion, major issues.
At WorldViewTube.com, we provide news from around the globe that isn't typically covered by mainstream media. Visit WorldViewTube.com to watch our experts and analysts discuss all your favorite topics on our 24/7 live stream. Explore our extensive collection of unfiltered and uncensored content from 35 years of production. Go to WorldViewTube.com today. Also find us on all of these major platforms and download our WorldView Tube mobile app.
All right, 1-800-347-9829. 1-800-347-9829. Your thoughts, your comments, your questions on what I've been laying out here today. 1-800-347-9829. 9829. 1-800-347-9829. I saw, this again goes back to what we're talking about. Look at this. Minneapolis Elementary School plans gay pride dance party for kids as young as 5. Now, can I just ask you again, is this why the folks up in Minnesota are paying state income tax? No, of course not. But let me ask you this. Could you have a hymn sing? Could you see the Minneapolis Elementary School saying, we're going to have a hymn sing? No, you couldn't do that. Well, what if the elementary school said, we're going to do a patriotic concert. We're going to sing God Bless America, America the Beautiful, God of our Fathers. Can you imagine the towel-wearing Islamist up there that would absolutely implode? They would have a fit. These invaders who've come over here and they're cheating the welfare system, and they're some of them just got prosecuted because they were just totally scamming to the tune of millions. You guys read about that, right? These people would absolutely have a fit. God forbid Minnesotans have their own history and culture. You guys had to change your flag. You had to change your flag from the farmer with the plow and the mule or the horse to what looks like the flag of Somalia. Do you think they really are going to have any kind of patriotic specials for the 250th anniversary of America in the Minneapolis schools? I'll be shocked. And sing songs like God Bless America, America the Beautiful, God of our Fathers. I would be absolutely shocked to see something like that happen. Can you imagine the outcry? Let's go to David in Phoenix. David, line 1. Thank you for calling in, David.
Thanks, Brannon. I think what we're dealing with here is actually a threat to our national security. So how can we solve that problem? Just wondering.
Well, I think again we're going to have governors that stand up and reassert the 10th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. We're going to have
right.
governors that are empowered to sign their own executive orders and to start getting tough, like Marco Rubio on these illegal invaders, like Donald Trump is trying to do. We are going to have to find the Republicans. Look, folks, the problem in Washington right now is the Republican Party. It is not Senator Ron Johnson. It is not Senator Tommy Tuberville. It is not Congressman Glenn Grothman. These are the people trying to do the right thing. The problem are the Lindsey Grahams, the Senator Tillis, and go on down the line. We know who the problem people are.
Yep.
We need Republicans to demand that these guys are unemployed.
Yeah.
And that you find people that will actually represent the people and our Constitution. And it is time to do away with these courts that the Congress established, and Congress should do away with them. Congress should be impeaching these judges. We have got to get the Republican Party to do their job. And if they don't, they will lose tremendously in the midterms, because Americans, there is enough of Americans that are aware and awake and very angry right now. But I have believed for years there is no salvation coming from Washington. Whatever Donald Trump is able to accomplish, God bless him. But at the end of the day, the states have got to empower their attorney generals and their governors to stand up and protect us as sovereign republics, independent sovereign republics. And I hate to say it, but I think we're approaching a time where this experiment no longer works, and it is time for the nations to break apart. And to those up in Seattle that want to attack Christians having a worship service outside, and the mayor wants to say that these people got attacked, it was their own fault because they're Christians in a public park, then you know what? Go up there and live in communist Washington State. Go live in communist Oregon. But for us, we're not doing it. in said states of America. Let's go to Jim in Joplin, line 2. Jim, thank you for calling in, Jim.
Yes, thank you for taking my call, Brannon. I just wanted to really applaud your monologue today. I would like to take a second here and focus on the first part of it where you were talking about hardworking people. I work for one of the top 3 food-producing companies in the world, and some days my job is very laborious. And, you know, sometimes you just, no matter how hard you work, you just can't seem to get on top of things. But I think coupled with you were saying is the insurance industry. My wife has a lot of very serious health problems. And now all of a sudden, the insurance company that we've been with for years, I've been paying all these premiums every single month, and she takes a lot of medication for her issues. And now all of a sudden, it's a fight every month to try to get these items paid for. Well, we just don't think you need that anymore. Well, wait a minute. You people aren't doctors. Why do you get to decide that? So I think that's part of the problem. What you're saying,
well, this is big government, big business. They've got each other's back. The revolving door between these government agencies and the pharmaceutical companies, the government agencies and the insurance companies. It's an incestuous relationship of big government, big business, corporate fascism. You're 100% right.
Yeah.
And Americans should not, who get up every day, work hard, save, are responsible, they should not struggle financially. They should not.
No.
The government should cut its books. They're talking about, what are we going to do? Some Republicans are saying we got to cut. And they're telling us all the reasons we can't cut. Oh, well, maybe what we need to do is raise Social Security to 69. Really? I'm planning on taking it at 62. I'm 56 now because they have stolen that money from me. I could have taken it and invested it and got a great return. They took it and put it into a Ponzi scheme that anyone else would go to prison for. They've stolen that money from me. I didn't get the chance to invest it and get a return. No wonder people can't get ahead. Your government is stealing half of your money. No wonder Andrew Jackson and our founders were so wealthy. They didn't have a federal government stealing half of everything they made. Take care. And that's our broadcast on those stations. Think about that for a minute. When you look at people like Andrew Jackson, or you go back to the founders like Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, you go visit their homes. And you're thinking, boy, for their time, they lived super nice lives. My wife was commenting on that the other day. We were watching a documentary. And we were looking at the homes of some of our founders, like Thomas Jefferson, like George Washington. And we were noticing the decorations in the home. Now, granted, these homes have been redone, but they've been redone to the period. They've been redone to the time. And yes, that is some of their dishes. That's some of their furniture. And my wife said, boy, they really had nice stuff. Yeah, they could afford to have nice stuff. My wife said, who do you think made all this stuff for them? I said, look, craftsmen, tradesmen. Look at the beautiful furniture, handmade. I wonder who made the wallpaper, right? Some of it was being shipped over from out of the country. Some of it was being done because there was reward in work. The whole free market system is based on work. Most people don't know that in America. Everything that has value because it is based on work. That you had to acquire the product, produce the product. Whether it's gold or silver, you had to work to get it up out of the ground. You had to mint it, right? Everything is based on W-O-R-K, work. What do we do today? We devalue the worker. We punish the worker. We put an anchor around the worker. We don't let the worker prosper. And so we take away their motivation. So that finally some people are so demoralized, they do give up. And some say, well, if you can't beat them, join them. And they get on the welfare rolls. They're like, I tried doing the business. I had a successful business. The government destroyed it. I'm done. And now they're on the welfare roll. How stupid, right? How stupid that the government destroys the people that are paying the taxes. But that's the goal of a Marxist tax system. And very, very few Americans anymore will do what it takes to run a small business. There's the percentage of real entrepreneurs in America, it's really a small percentage of the population. There's a lot of people that work for those companies, but there's very few entrepreneurs anymore because you're rolling a boulder up a hill. Should be the exact opposite. There should be an environment in this country that allows the entrepreneur to prosper left and right. And it starts with getting rid of the Internal Robbery Service, the IRS. This huge failed experiment of Marxism. We tried it in America. We're doing it in America. It's not working in America. But no wonder George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Andrew Jackson, these people's homes who I've been to, no wonder their homes are so nice. They didn't have the federal government stealing half of everything they made, or the state governments. They didn't have inflation either. Think about that for a minute. The Federal Reserve in 1913, this hidden tax of inflation. But I go back to what I said earlier. Most Americans have no idea what I'm talking about right now. They would be absolutely oblivious to the idea of what inflation is. They couldn't even define it. They don't know that it's a hidden tax. They don't know what, they don't really know. They just know the groceries are high, and therefore they blame it on the grocery store owner. The greedy grocery store owners. Really? The guy's trying to make a profit of maybe 2 cents for a can of tuna? Who makes his profit on volume? Let me tell you who the culprit is. It's always government. Always. They're the ones stealing. They're the ones that are inflating. And yet the average American has no idea. Why are the prices so high? They don't know because we haven't taught them in our schools. We don't even teach them how to balance a checkbook. Do you know that? We don't teach kids basics anymore. Now I'm reading there's a flocking back to the trades. Well, praise the Lord for that. But here's the question. Who's going to hire the craftsmen and the tradesmen? Who's going to be the entrepreneur that has the capital to have the HVAC? Because right now the HVAC companies and plumbing businesses are being bought up by the hedge funds. Are we creating an environment that's based on work and rewarding work? No, we're not. But don't expect the average politician to understand it because they're political whores who have never worked an honest day in their life. Has Hillary Clinton ever run a company? No. She's just like the rest of them, Republicans and Democrats. You could put them in a bag and shake them up and dump them out. You could barely tell them apart. We've got serious problems. We better get to the serious answers.
You're watching WorldView Tube, built on the 35 years of WorldView books, documentaries, research, high-profile interviews, and the radio and television